I'm going to tell you something. If you two never bother me again in the rest of my life, I ain't giving them attention. I can't. There's good friends of mine out on the say. Well, he's the boss, you have to do his stuff. That's why I said to you before, you don't understand what the boss is that the boss is your boss.
All right, and welcome to Mob Talk Radio. I'm your host, Jeff Canorsi. Do me a favor, if you're new here, hit the like and subscribe button. If you feel free to donate, that's where you can at the bottom of the screen. So, as you guys saw, sort of from the outset here, let me change how this looks really quick. This is what we're going to talk about today. And sort of a disclaimer at the very beginning of the show is my opinion over the years has been all over the place with this. But I think the older you get, the wiser you get. And for a long time, years ago, I didn't do nearly the research that I used to do. And what I'm going to say today is probably going to be not very popular amongst a lot of different people. But I call it how I see it. I'm always honest about sort of this kind of stuff. And so the question is John Gotti Jr. a rat, or is he not a rat? Now, why any of you would care is shocking to me. But the reason why I chose to do this show is because somebody recently on their YouTube channel, a content creator, sort of made this cloak and dagger comment that I would not come out publicly and speak about the subject. And that's actually not true. Because reality is I've been doing this longer than anybody. And I've always maintained the same exact stance. How the streets views John Gotti Jr. is really, at the end of the day, the only thing that matters. My opinion, your opinion, anybody else's opinion doesn't really matter. And do the streets' opinion really matter at the end of the day anyway? But at the bottom, or at the end of the day, my opinion really doesn't matter. The entire 302 narrative, which was started by an informant, is filled with gaps, it's filled with lies, and it's filled with utter nonsense. And the mere fact that anybody of any stature in the streets would repeat what an informant says only proves to me what I've said all along. They don't care about rats because they will use whatever informants claim to be the truth when it suits their needs. And those are certifiable facts. And let me state for the record, I don't know John. I never said I did. I met him twice and had a handful of conversations with him about a lot of different things. And I also want to state, I in no way feel the need to defend him, nor am I. I'm not going to defend him. I personally am going to talk about whatever the fuck I want and have whatever the fucking opinion that I want. And I could care less what anyone thinks. I don't care. I'm going to have my opinion. On this show, the one thing that I do better than anybody else is research. Say what you want about me, but there's RJ Rogers and there's me. And then there's like Jake Stoops. We do our research. And nobody, whether you like me, hate me, whatever the case may be, you can't say I don't do research. Because I do. And I love how some of you claim that you do research. Yet astonishingly, you do nothing but repeat lies and then go, oh, I did the research. We know you didn't do the research. And that being said, the question and why we're here is John Gotti Jr. a rat? And the answer to that is not a yes or no. It's going to depend on who you ask. But at the end of the day, most of you, I would say 90% of you, have no clue how the streets operate. Most of you are like mob groupies, you're mob movie fiends, who honestly believe that you can't leave the life. I've heard multiple content creators. I'm not talking about individual ones, but I've heard probably 10 say, oh, you can't leave the life. Who said? That just tells me you know nothing about the streets. And it's bullshit. I don't care what your opinion on me is. The reality is, love me or hate me, I'm one of the best people when it comes to research. Can't deny that. Even when my research doesn't make somebody look good, people know I do research well. It's just the facts. And so I want to begin this by asking some of you a legit question, just a legit question. Why do you care if John Gotti Jr. is a rat or he's not? How does that impact your day-to-day life? How does that change your narrative? Why even care? Are you angry because Angel Gotti is on YouTube defending her brother? Is that what your problem really is? And I don't know if it is or not. I'm just asking a question. Shouldn't people be glad that he left the life behind and is doing positive things? Let me ask you another question. Is John Gotti Jr. on YouTube screaming about rats? Is he out there making a fool of himself daily, screaming like a fucking washwoman about rats? No, he's not. And so what are the facts? Because this is something that gets convoluted and gets misconstrued all the time. Number one, John did, in fact, request to sit down with the FBI. The plan, according to him, was to subterfuge the FBI. According to John, the Mafia signed off on the idea of what he was doing. And we know those are facts. And we know that, well, I'll get into that in a second, but we know that what was put in a book was a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. If you hold that 302 up against gas pipe Cassos, they're almost identical. So that leads me to believe that what was in that book was not really what came from his 302. Or the FBI just carbon copied it, whichever the case may be. And you can choose to not believe that if you want. But in that document, in that book, there are no FBI corresponding file numbers, no SA signatures, nothing. It looked like somebody went on Microsoft Word, just typed up whatever the fuck they wanted. Okay? It's a fourth generation repeat copy of something. And what's funny about it is you people are going to say, oh, informants lie and what they say is bullshit when it applies to you and your situation. But with others, the informant has to be telling the truth. And the feds have to be telling the truth. And it's ridiculous. And people always make those distinctions because they don't like somebody. And that's not being factual. John, sitting down with the feds, he called, in his words, a weak moment. And everybody seizes on that as if it's some sort of admission of ratting. And it's not an admission of anything other than John feeling like he did something stupid because it didn't work. It worked actually in reverse. Because as we know, he faced 5 trials after that. Informants or rats do not face 5 trials after they talk. They don't have the death penalty lodged against them. In fact, statistically, it's actually the reverse when you really look at it. However, you have to do research. And if you actually looked into this issue to understand it, none of you have, and it shows. You are regurgitating what informants say and what unhinged washwomen on YouTube are saying. Yet you have no problem with certain people being an active member of Cosa Nostra being on YouTube. You have no problem with that. And your viewpoints are odd because they're based solely on who you're angry at or what you like at any particular moment. Nothing more, nothing less. So enjoy Massino's federal testimony in his federal case, and you can go and investigate the documents for yourself, which are available through the Freedom of Information Act and other sources. Joey Massino admitted on the stand that both he and Vinny Basciano signed off on the idea of John Gotti Jr. attempting to placate the federal government, but that it would look bad, but it was an outside-the-box idea which they greenlit. Now, those are facts. If you don't believe me, go look it up for yourself. I'm not going to do the homework for you. Go look it up for yourself. I have no reason to make anything up. But if that's the case, the Joey Massino and Vinny Basciano signed off on that. Doesn't that make Vinny Basciano a rat too in your warped ideology of what you believe for signing off on such an idea? And the idiots and the morons are going to say, no, because Vinny Basciano's not the one who did it. But he signed off on that. He said, go ahead. Greenlighting somebody to sit down with the feds is almost worse than actually doing it yourself. Yet none of you admit or acknowledge that for 1 second. And it's because many of you aren't smart enough to understand it. Now, before you start finger pointing at me, let me just be clear. I don't like what he did. I never have. The streets are going to see that as a rat move 100%. However, why don't we talk about allocution? Because half of these guys you guys all worship have allocuted in federal court, admitting they're a gangster. Allocution is admitting to being involved in a secret society, which was once considered a rat move to everybody. But let's just bypass that. The fact that Joey Massino and Vinny Basciano both did acknowledge that Gotti cleared this idea with them should tell you a lot of things. However fucked up it is, it's just as bad of them signing off on it. If your contemporaries give you the green light and that's acceptable to them, why isn't it acceptable to you? Why? Because a washwoman says otherwise? A guy who's, whoever he is on YouTube, which goes against everything that we know traditionally? What? Because he says it, it makes it so? That's the biggest hypocritical shit I've ever seen in my life. Yet you people who, who fake this, oh, I believe in tradition shit, they don't utter a word about the other side of the train tracks. And it's because you're idiots and you don't know a single fucking thing about the streets. You pick which side you want to be on by who you like, who you're, in alignment with, nothing more, nothing less. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but there's just some people that are. And so what we know is that what's in that 302, which by the way is memorialized and written by agents. It can often be twisted, reworded, and those are just facts. It doesn't mean he didn't offer things. He did. However, the truthfulness of those things are wide and far. And I want you to think about something. Put on your thinking caps. No matter what your beliefs are, no matter who you like, I just want you to answer this question. Had John Gotti Jr. given up real information, crimes that were unsolved, things that were abhorrent, don't you think they would have used whatever he said to go after somebody? Don't you think someone would have gotten indicted as a result of that? They would have stopped at nothing, especially considering they have a Gotti sitting there talking to them and telling them stuff. Use common sense. He sat down, he offered them hamstrung nonsense. They find out it's a joke, and then they proceed to go after him 5 times for it. He did not give up 30 people like some goofball said. He never gave up 30 people. Even most of you know that. Even if we base it on that stupid fake 302 that came out in a book, there's not 30 names in that book. It's ridiculous. It's not true. And it's a bull-faced lie like much of what comes out of that other guy's mouth. Here, however, is a question nobody has ever asked, and I'm going to ask it publicly. And this is one question that seems to escape every single one of you. If you sit down with the feds, knowing your reputation is on the line, be it in the streets, and you know everything that you say or about to say is bullshit, and you know the feds are going to go after whatever information that you provide to them, and you know they're going to find out it's a lie because you're lying, how the fuck do you expect not to be ripped apart for that in court? What is the gain? What is the ultimate plan? And what I'm never going to understand, and this is a question John can answer, but it's one that's never been posed, knowing you're feeding them bullshit. What did you hope to gain by even wasting your time? Because as I said, the feds are going to do their due diligence here, right? And they're going to realize after about 3 days, you're full of shit. because every lead they follow isn't going to work out. And that's where I tend to get confused about what his attempt was. And if anything, it was a catastrophic mistake. Even John knows how this works. It was done to his father by 100 people. And if shit doesn't add up, they're not going to offer you anything. Perhaps John's buying time. Perhaps he was tickling their wires trying to get them to give something up that they knew. And I don't know because I've never asked him, and nobody ever has. Only he knows. And additionally, not for nothing, what damages him beyond belief? Because I'm just going to call it a spade here. What damages John are his statements he made in videos. And one of the ones that he says is, when I said I only did this to get at my enemies, that was his statement. And that's hard to take back. You can't take that back. And it's a statement that, combined with the 302 or the action of proffering, it buries you in the court of public opinion. There's no getting around that. Having a weak moment does not constitute informing. It means going against what you believe, what you're brought up to believe. It goes against your principles. And I get it. And where John came from, how he grew up, he knows the moniker he's going to get after that. But that only lends itself to the fact that the guy left the life and wanted no part of it. He told his father he was done. He wanted out. So I want to pose to you 5 questions. Did John testify against anybody? Did anything that he say to the feds lead to a prosecution? Did anything that he say lead him to get a better deal or help him in the long run? By offering up bad intel, what positive did he gain from that? If the mob signed off on what he did, which is true, why is it you people can't understand that and you don't have a problem with the people that greenlit it? And the answer to all 5 of those questions, did he testify against anybody? No. Did anything he say lead to a prosecution or an indictment? No. Did anything that he offer help him? No. Quite the reverse. By offering up bad intel, what positive did he gain from that? He didn't. The answer is no. If the mob signed off on what he did, why is it that you people can't understand that? Because you like to cherry pick. It's that simple. Listen, the very core of being an informant is to get underneath your charges by blaming everybody else, getting a deal in which you serve no time for your own criminality and indiscretions. Nothing John did makes him a rat on any level. And you're going to have to stay. And I know what you're all thinking. Well, he sat out with the cops. That makes him a rat. Okay. But just follow me on this logic. If there's not an indictment, there's not a deal, nor a prosecution based on the words that come out of your mouth, you are not an informant. That's just my opinion. What the streets say is going to be something totally different. However, here we go. In the streets, you're going to find massive hypocrisy among them. The streets are the biggest hypocritical section of the world you're ever going to cross. Let me give you an example. You got a guy on YouTube who has a problem he won't even acknowledge. He's got men within his own crime family on the Jersey Shore having dinner and drinks with known informants. They've been photographed. They've been seen together. Want another one? There's a guy associated who gives information to journalists and book authors on the daily. Do you see the hypocrisy in that? Nobody says anything about that. There was a co-counsel lawyer who was besties with John A. Light. Let John A. Light drive his car. He knew it because pictures were shown to him. He has no issue with it then, but now all of a sudden he does? Hypocrisy. Sonny Francis, he was a man's man. Stand up and did more time than most guys on earth. And because he chose the latter part of his life to talk to his son, somehow makes him a rat. It doesn't. It makes him a human being who loved his son. At some point, humanity has to outweigh bullshit beliefs in the street. You can love somebody and not like what they do and not have any respect for what they've done. But that does not make him an informant or a rat in any way. If that's the case, maybe I should post some photos and make a fool out of some of you that were taken on the Jersey Shore. I want to talk about hypocrisy. What John did looks a certain kind of way, and I admit it. I get it. But unless you're going to look into it, unless you're going to do the research, then you should just keep your opinion to yourself. I mean, you're entitled to your opinion. There's not a problem with it. You don't have to believe me. Do your own research. Get the testimony from Joey Massino's trial. See it for yourself. I'm not going to do it for you. It's not my job to do it for you. And you can certainly believe what John did was bad. But you can even use the excuse, well, the streets, XYZ, but in reality, that's a bullshit stance. And you want to know why? Vito Genovese ratted on Lucky Luciano. He told the American authorities Luciano was in Cuba. Gets Luciano deported. Luciano dimed out narcotics traffickers to save his ass when he was about to take a pinch. Carlo Gambino set up Vito Genovese to take a pinch for drugs, using Nelson Cantaloupes, who was a drug dealer who Carlo knew was going to tell the cops. But you people will go, oh, but the tradition. Carlo Gambino conspired to kill Albert Anastasia. Vito Genovese tried to kill Frank Costello. Luciano killed both Masseria and Maranzano. John Gotti had Paul Castellano killed. Yet, what you fucking people will say, John Gotti went against the rules. What fucking rules? What fucking rules are you talking about? And that is simply my point and proof to all of you. You pick and choose what you want to believe in, when the reality is, in the streets, the rules only apply to the most powerless. And why do I say that? Because only the most powerful can choose to ignore those rules and do what they want. And as for John, the streets can claim whatever the fuck they want to claim about him. But he didn't do anything that nobody else before him has not done, or worse. He's no different than them. And what's funny is some of you will say, well, that was just a certain time period. They were all doing it back then. Luciano was doing it. Gambino, that's just kind of how things went. It was commonplace. No, it's not a generational thing. That's how the mob works. It's always been that way. It's always been like that. That's why you people don't understand this. It's the pot calling the kettle black. So in final, do I like what John Jr. did? No. Do I agree with it? No. But am I him? No, I'm not. A man who loved his wife and children enough to try and do anything to end the nonsense, to try and escape the dark clouds that his father brought onto the family, only to somehow miraculously escape and leave that all behind. That should be something you look up to. A man chose his destiny. He chose to change, and for that he should be applauded, not condoned. How he got there might not be what's considered good for his reputation. But who did he hurt? He only hurt himself. 5 trials, millions of dollars, a house mortgaged into the ground, prison time, lost time with his children he can never get back, lost time with his family he can't get back. These are all choices he made on his own. But all he did was hurt himself and those he loved. So give up the bullshit. Stop trying to make him something that he isn't. And listen, the streets are going to dictate whatever term they want. Sure, I have my viewpoints about what somebody should do and what somebody shouldn't do, but who the fuck am I to judge anybody at this point? I have my core beliefs. But where I do stray with all of this is when you hold up what he did against others in that life, it's no different. And it's not even to the extreme. You guys try to make this like some extreme thing, like he had 16 days at the feds and told them thousands of crimes. We don't even know what he really said because that is a reproduction of events. Never mind, nobody wants to talk about the fact that the FBI released this information because they were still angry with the Gotti family. And Eric Holder got a letter on behalf of John Gotti Jr. asking how this document was even released and why. No answer, ghost, crickets. It is what it is. You guys can think whatever you want. I don't agree with what he did, but that doesn't make him a rat either. But you can't call one person a rat and not the other. You cannot have an imaginary standard where one guy sat down, fed the FBI a bunch of bullshit, but then you have an active mob boss on YouTube. Do you see the hypocrisy in some of your stances? It's because you don't have a stance. The choice is yours to make. And you can all believe whatever you want, but labeling him a rat by some code that every single person in history has broken, to me, is what ill-informed purists think is right. When in fact, there are no rules. And so you're entitled to believe what you want. You can call him names, you can call him a rat, you can do whatever you want. But the reality is if you're not going to do the research, don't take a stand because you agree with somebody who's screaming like a washwoman all over YouTube. It's nonsense to me. And the problem is that you people like to define what the term rat is every other week. It changes. All that matters really at the end of the day is if the streets see it that way, then they see it that way. If you want to see it some kind of way, you can see it whatever way you want. But the guy never dimed out 30 people. That's like the most absurd shit I've ever heard. And you know what? Call me the amazing Krushkin. What is it that Johnny Carson used to hold up paper above his house or his head and go, this is what's going to happen. When John Gotti Jr. does come to YouTube, half of you motherfuckers that are calling him a rat right now are going to be all in his chat loving everything he says. Because that's how you people operate. That's what you people think. You don't know the first thing about the streets at all. And listen, I've had a difference of opinion over my life about this entire situation. But really, at the end of the day, he didn't put anybody in jail. He didn't say anything that led to anything. Was it wrong talking to the Fed? Sure, of course it is. He acknowledged that. It looks the kind of way. I get it. But I'm past the point after like 12 years into the organized crime talk. I'm past the point of apples and oranges with that term. Because people will label people that fucking name whenever it suits them. But yet then will platform informants, which is very odd to me. You have such a hatred for them, but yet you'll platform them on your show when it suits you because you're angry at somebody else. And there's going to be those, because let me just be transparent about it. There's going to be those that say, well, you know, Canarsie used to think that because of what happened, John was an informant. And all I've ever said is the following. In the streets, that's how they see it. In fact, if you go to half my lives when that question comes up, I've never ducked the question. I said, well, according to the streets, he is. According to the streets, he is. But nobody calls Vinny Basciano a fucking rat. And he greenlit this. And that's my point about the hypocrisy. People don't want to mention that because Vinny Basciano's a hero. Free Vinny, free Vinny. But when Vinny signs off on this idea, nobody says a fucking word. It's crickets. Why is that? You don't have to like the guy. You can say whatever you want about him. And I'm not defending what he did. But I'm a big proponent of facts. I'm a big proponent of what the record says. Is it a good look? No, it's just not. Him saying I only went after my enemies, that was probably the dumbest thing he could ever fucking said. I got to be honest with you, because that does not help him. And I remember seeing it, and I remember saying to somebody else, ooh, I wouldn't have said that. But that's John. He's owned it, never hidden it, talked about it at length, showed you the paperwork, showed you everything that was going on. But you guys just want to believe what you want to believe, and that's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. But the same people that are sort of lobbying this against him have no problem with active guys in the mafia on YouTube. Get real. You cannot pick and choose what's acceptable and what's not. It either is or it either isn't. And that's the truth because Jeff Canarsie fucking says so.